I'm Steven. That's Tiffany. That's Erock. That's John. We are from Just Got Played, and we are gaming through themes. Well, so what does that mean? Well, the themes are the window dressing of a board game. What is the game about? And that could be evoked in the story, the text on the cards, the art, a lot of different things. But when we're talking about gaming through themes, we're talking about games that really evoke the theme for us. And today, we are in the 10th video in the series, and we are talking about science fiction. Now, we already did one video, which was outer space, which meant that space and traveling through space, multiple planets, galaxies, etc., sort of mattered. So we won't be revisiting those games. And we also are in the future going to do a video that is just about, planets or asteroids. So this video is about science fiction that doesn't fit into those categories. Now, for me personally, science fiction is it's definitely fiction, right? So it's something that hasn't happened, but it has a grounding. The fiction has a grounding in science. And for me, it's forward looking. So I wouldn't pick something like steampunk as science fiction for me. And if you were to look at something that was sort of post-apocalyptic, I wouldn't. Some people lump that in science fiction. I won't lump that in science fiction because that isn't sort of forward-looking science to me. That is more like survival horror or something else usually. So anyway, that is just me personally, what I think about science fiction. But we all have two personal picks of games that fit in this category. And there are the two picks from the people's choice. If you are interested in joining us and voting on the people's choice when we make these videos, join our Discord channel, the link to the description below. And if you want to get an extra vote when we're doing those votes, become a channel member by hitting that join button below. All right, so let's get started. And I'm going to pass it over to Erock for his first pick for science fiction.
Excellent. Thank you, Stephen. So I want to first say that this was a very hard list to make. Once you take away space and planets and asteroids, it really kind of puts a focus on that, because everything that you probably can think about offhand is going to be either flying around through space or something about a planet. So, but at the end of the day, I was able to find some really good options here. I think it just goes to speak about the breadth of science fiction in the hobby anyway. There's so much science fiction, and that's why we had to cut it into 3 separate pieces, because otherwise it's like 40% of the games out there are some kind of science fiction. So it would be one huge list, or as we did, 3 lists. So anyway, I kind of think of science fiction as, I don't know, kind of like Steve, like forward thinking, almost future. Although I can see where past could be science fiction, like the world of Scythe. Like that's science fiction. It's like 1920s science fiction, but it could also fit there. But I didn't actually choose Scythe. I'm just saying that's kind of my outlook as well. My actual first choice for this category is Beyond the Sun. I really like this game. For those of you who do not know, it is basically Tech Tree, the game. The board is massive, and in it you start at the very beginning of a tech tree. And as the game goes on, the whole point is to research more things that lead up to the end of this tech tree. And this is all futuristic science kinds of experiments and theories and all this other stuff that you are researching up the chain. Now, purists out there might say that this is also a space or a planet game, because there is another board that is maybe 20% the size of the actual board, in which you do fly around in space and maybe take over the planets here and there. But that's really not the point of the game. That's just something else going on while you're playing the game. And the game is the tech tree. It's all about that. This is a single worker placement game. So you have one worker and you move him around and do different things on every turn. Most of which is, like I said, climbing your way up that tech tree. I think it's fantastic. It's probably the best tech tree in a game that's reasonable. I mean, there's things like Twilight Imperium has a nice tech tree in it, but you also need like a flow chart and a master's degree to understand what's going on there. I really like the tech tree in this. It makes sense. It's only like 4, maybe 5 layers deep, depending upon if you count the front or whatever. And it all makes sense. Plus, you can do some really cool moves on the board itself with the tech tree, because there's basically like 4 different kinds of sciences, and you have to do those as you go up the tech tree. But tech trees get smaller. You know what I'm saying? As you go, like it's very big on the bottom and small on the top. So every time you make a leap from one level to the next level, it's kind of where 2 of them meet. And you can kind of squash out certain ways of doing this. You know what I'm saying? Like, your buddy across the table might be trying to research military stuff, as an example, and it just kind of goes the same way where your like agriculture stuff's going, and you get there before him, and suddenly that whole line is dead now. There's nowhere for that line to go. So it's a really cool way of kind of maneuvering around the tech tree itself as the whole game. I really appreciate the design of this, and that's my number 1. Beyond the Sun.
Beyond the Sun is a fun game. I remember enjoying the tech tree component when I played. It was fun to do. I enjoy tech trees in video games, so I figured why not in a board game. But it is definitely a space game, and so it doesn't qualify for this list.
It is not a space game.
Disqualified.
Tech tree as a game has always sort of sounded interesting to me, but I played a game that was Tech Tree, the game, Progress Evolution of Technology. I thought it was not that great, sort of dry. So now I've just shied away from it a little bit. But I would still play this game given the opportunity, of course.
Cool.
It's fun.
All right, Tiffany. Let's see what Tiffany's number 1 is.
All right. So the first one I'm going to share with you is actually my second pick. I feel like this one fits the theme better, so I'm going to lead with this. I picked Specter Ops as my sci-fi game. Let me pause and just say I'm not a big sci-fi person at all. So when I think sci-fi, I generally think like aliens. That's my first assumption. And then beyond that I have to ask myself, okay, well what does sci-fi mean? What if we put the word science and fiction, they would seem at odds. Put them together, what does that mean? And so for me, it's just anytime you look through a science lens to view a fictional story. So, or a fictional theme or topic or whatever. So if you, so with Specter Ops, I felt like this fit because you are all these like scientists or whatever, they're these people in this big place, and you are trying to catch this alien creature that has escaped from holding and is kind of wreaking havoc. And you have to catch the creature before it escapes and goes into the great beyond. Obviously, I hope that is fictional. I hope we don't have like creatures in vats somewhere, right now where they're like guarding it with guns and like shoot him if it gets out. I hope that doesn't happen. Hope it's all fictional. But it also is looking through, a scientific lens because it's a species. It's, I don't know. It's all that stuff. So it's not real and it's sciencey. So that was the one that I felt best matched the theme. Specter Ops. I love this game because it's got hidden movement. This is my first introduction to hidden movement. And so the person that is the creature, they have like a little pad and they record where they go and so that they know where they've been. And then the rest of the team is trying to kind of spread out and search and use their knowledge of what's going on and their little map to try to locate this hidden movement person who is the creature. So it was my first introduction to hidden movement. I had so much fun. I was at a con that probably influenced it too. But it was just great fun. And I think a great introduction to hidden movement was Specter Ops.
I think hidden movement and science fiction goes pretty well together. I mean, there have been a few alien sort of
like a Predator
theme games. Yeah, exactly. Cool. You talk about thematically science fiction, and as as I was going down my list of games, looking at games, I always start by just looking at my highest rated games, right? And I go down the list and I say, does this really fit the category? And it's funny because I thought I liked a lot of science fiction. And, again, we're limited by the category here, as we talked about earlier. But I got down it and I was like, Race for the Galaxy, that's too thin. For me, It's a Wonderful World is an excellent game, but I felt the science fiction was a little thin there.
It's more futurology.
Yeah, well, I mean, also because it can just be like this color cube, that color cube, engine building, right? Like you can totally.
I agree.
It's
it
how
almost
much you
made my list. It's a really good game, and it is science fiction, but it's not really. It could just be anything. It's like you said. It could just be cubes. Add this cube, take this cube away, turn these cubes into something else. You have to really dig deep. It's there because it's like UFOs and all kinds of stuff on the cards, but you got to really like be in it to be in it.
It doesn't make you pay attention to it. You can ignore the science fiction in that game. And so, that's where my number one pick, maybe you could say the same thing about. You could maybe ignore the science fiction element for this game. I mean, I guess you absolutely could. But for me, I feel it because I feel like this game is a science fiction take on Wolverines, the movie, because this is 1986's Fortress America. So Fortress America is near timeline science fiction, right? But it has hover tanks and it has space lasers. And you are trying to defend America from 3 different aggressors in the East, South, and the West. Or you're trying to invade America as those 3 collectively. And I don't think it's supposed to be up to a 4-player game, but really it's just a 2-player game to me, right? One person's the invader, one person's the defender. I like playing as the defender, and it's just a race against time because the attackers get all these reinforcements every turn at the beginning of the game, and then they start to taper off. But the U.S. defenders never run out of reinforcements. They just keep coming and coming, and they build more and more of these powerful space lasers. And, I own all those Game Master games. I own Axis and Allies and Shogun and Fortress America. And, those games were great for the day, but I don't ever find myself wanting to really play them anymore. Like, I don't want to break out Axis and Allies. I'd probably break out Memoir 44 instead, right? If I just want to play a dice chucking war game sort of experience. And Shogun, I don't know. I don't feel like pulling out. But Fortress America, I have pulled out more recently and played it over 3 days. It's a long game. But I would play it again. And I have the older version. So I think the newer version has some changes that nerf my favorite defensive strategy. So I'd be interested to see that as well. Incidentally, that's where you sort of do a organized retreat on the West Coast and don't spend a lot of effort trying to defend the West Coast, and then you hold the line at the Appalachians in the South.
So your strategy is give them California. Maybe maybe they'll get slowed down there.
They're gonna run out of troops and gas and everything trying to get across the Great Plains, and then by
all
then,
the productions in the East.
Yeah, you're ready to steamroll back across. So, but you gotta, when you draw the partisans cards or whatever, you gotta scream Wolverines. Like, I get into this game thematically, right? And not only do I get into it thematically, but in my head I'm picturing these sci-fi battles, because you've got even the bomber for its day was like this sleek looking thing, and there's nothing special about it in the game that makes it sci-fi, but its model does. And the hover tanks, they could just be tanks, but they look like hover tanks, and they're called hover tanks. And then, of course, space lasers is, an integral part of the game, which there's no modern equivalent that you know of in that. But yeah, so I don't know. I feel like for the same things we were talking about for It's a Wonderful World, that you could say, well, that the theme is thin there. I feel like you could say that about Fortress America too, but in my head, it is right there front and center, the whole thing. And
pretty thin. It's light sci-fi. It's like low sci-fi.
Well, part of that is because it's very near term sci-fi, right? So it's just barely over the science.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's also like the hover tank and the space laser.
Don't shame his sci-fi.
What's that?
I said, don't shame his sci-fi.
You shamed Erock sci-fi.
I
Well,
get
'cause it
it,
wasn't-
right? I mean, I led into it,
It was
about the same
disqualified.
thing. But I'm just
Let's
saying,
just disqualify
in my
Steven and move on.
In my head, this science fiction narrative is stronger than what might be in your head. Just like with It's a Wonderful World, it's how much you make of it. So for me,
The problem is it's all in your head. It's not in the game.
I'm not
I mean,
disqualifying you. I'm just laughing
Yeah.
at you.
I didn't invent the sci-fi. It's in the game. It's just
How
how
do-
much do
yeah.
you want to pay attention to it.
How do we not have a Red Dawn board game, by the way?
Yeah.
Wolverines?
Wolverine.
It's
I want to pay money to watch the science fiction version of Wolverines now. Come on.
Yeah.
Do that. Big budget movie. Let's do it.
Spielberg, you hear us?
I mean,
know
how
you're
many
watching.
hundreds of millions of dollars do we make off this YouTube channel? Let's put it
Oh,
towards that
yeah.
movie.
Yep.
excellent. I'll direct.
Self-financed.
All right, cool. So, John, what do you got? I'm gonna back out
Well,
from getting shamed about my pick. Let's all focus
I
on
wanted
John.
I wanted to pick games that actually fit the criteria, so I kind of went off rails compared to you guys. To me, sci-fi is this simple to explain. Anything where you have a sufficiently advanced of technological advancement, and you put it down into layman's terms by taking a piece of paper and putting a pencil through it and say that's a black hole. Anything that does that's automatically sci-fi, just for the record. But there's a game it's really lesser known, and I wish that they would like reprint it, and it really deserves a lot more people knowing about it, but it's called Gravwell. And the point of it is that you all start at a point and you're being sucked into a sun. All of your spaceships are just going to get sucked into a sun and explode because of the gravity of the situation, which is the name Gravwell comes from. So the entire game is you're drafting cards that move you either forward, backwards, pull ships towards you, or repulse other ships. And you're using the gravitational pull of other ships in the game to try to get yourself closer to the black hole so that you can exit the sector and survive. And basically the first person that's able to go along this track and get to the black hole wins the game. But the entire time as you're trying to go, other gravity of other ships is pulling you backwards, and they're using you to jetty for position. It's just this really neat back and forth where you feel like you're just a rubber band being pulled in two different directions as you're trying to use this to your advantage. And it's not as simple of like I play a 7 and I move 7. Sometimes you can play a card that was going to move you forward while somebody moved ahead of you, so now you're moving away from the nearest body of gravity and you're going backwards instead. So it's this really neat play on sci-fi of just like everybody's in a spaceship, you're fighting gravity, you're having to use science to do it, to try to figure out the right trajectory and who's nearby so you can push off of them to get basically save your crew's life. So it's just really fun thematic game where the mechanics and the theme are just completely together. You can't separate them. It's not a bolted on theme. You're actually having to use the scientific theme of this to escape the mechanisms of the game. So it's really fun. It's really thematic. It's not too long. And it's just a game that I wish was more popular because I really think it deserves to be. That's why it's number 2 on my list.
Used to play a lot of that. It's been quite a while since I have played, but I played a ton of that game. It's quick and fun.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Are the actual gravity calculations correct? Does it come with an abacus? Does it come with a slide?
It wasn't made by Phil Eckland, if that's what you're saying.
It's not from 1986. There's no abacus. We have technology now.
There were no deluxe Kickstarters in 1986.
No, there is not. But this game, pun intended, flew under the radar. And like, I'll bet if you asked 100 people about it, 98 of them wouldn't know about it. And it's a crime because it's a game that has a unique mechanism that I've never seen even close to emulated anywhere else. And it's really worth it just for that neat factor. And then the theme comes in and it's just a fun little game.
All right, cool. So that was everybody's first choice anyway. Well, maybe not first pick, but first selection. Tiffany, let's go back to Tiffany because you haven't told us your number 1 yet, right?
Right. So my number 1, I guess listening to you guys, maybe it fits the theme better. I don't know. To me, the theme is there for the game, for what the game is supposed to be, but it doesn't scream sci-fi. To me, I think it's a little too close to sci. It's a little too close to reality. Not fictional enough for me because I was a Jurassic Park kiddo. And so I'm like, we are one breath away from finding a mosquito in amber and creating a theme park about dinosaurs. That is going to happen in my lifetime. So it doesn't really seem super fictional to me. But my number 1 pick for my favorite game that I think some people could call sci-fi is Dinosaur Island. It is so much fun. It is right up my alley as far as it's a long worker placement, especially the more people you play, the longer it takes. You are combining these different genes so that you can create different dinosaurs to put in your theme park. You're researching, you're developing, you're doing all of these wonderful things. It is just glorious and a slog of a resource management game. I love it so much. So I guess maybe I don't know if it's I don't do sci-fi, but yeah, Dinosaur Island was my
that's absolutely sci-fi.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, and
I just feel it's
because we cannot make dinosaurs.
We're so close.
Yeah, Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park is a classic science fiction novel.
Jeff Goldblum's on standby in case they do make the breakthrough, and he can tell them it's a bad idea.
I actually prefer Tiny Epic Dinosaurs, where you're a dinosaur rancher. And boy, actually, you know what? I like Tiny Epic Mechs, but neither of those quite got over the sci-fi bump for me. But yeah, you know that whole thing about humans making dinosaurs for fun and profit. Yeah, that's science fiction.
Even when it's not a good idea, it's very much based in reality, but science fiction.
Wait, you're saying people don't do things for fun and profit unless they're good ideas?
I'm going to go on the record and say that hooligans ruined that game for me. I hate hooligans.
I
hate them so much.
Have to mitigate them.
There's mitigation there. Yeah.
There's like 2 cards in the game that can mitigate them. Hopefully they came up
early. Yeah.
And just to be fair, you call it a very long slog of a game, but that's because you always choose to do the long game. You can do a short game, you can do a medium game, or you can do a long game. So it does not have to be a 4-hour game. But to be fair again, I feel like we always choose the long game because the short game is over so fast. Like you barely get into the game at all. And the medium game is like, I didn't really get to where I was trying to get to. Like it almost takes the long game to go through, like, because when you sit down to play this, you want to make big dinosaurs, man. You don't want to make like one dinosaur and the game's over. You want to make a park of dinosaurs. And really the only way to do that is to play the long game. But I just wanted to point out that it is possible to play a short or a medium game of this.
Yeah, if you want to do it wrong, you can play a shorter one.
Yeah, I've spoken about it on the channel before. I don't really like this game at all for a specific game design reason, but absolutely, I feel like it fits on this list, and it's a good choice for the list. So, all right, cool. Let's go back to John. John, what else did you have?
So I'm sure somebody's going to raise an objection to this because there's so much going on in it.
I'll do it now then. I'll
go ahead and pre-do it, Erock.
Gary.
Pre-object.
Formal protest.
Are we going back to checking with the judges?
I'm sure there's going to be some kind of disqualifying because it covers every facet of sci-fi you could possibly imagine. So one is going to trigger one of our specific conditions. But the game is Battlestar Galactica. And it is, to me, the king of sci-fi. The show, I love the show. The theme of it is so well done. And for the show to have 20 different things going on, they take every single aspect of that show, every aspect, and they translate it over to the board game. Unfortunately, that means it's a 5-hour game, but it really feels like you're playing through the actual show, and there's nothing missing. It's just crazy how well they were able to take that theme and marry it to this board game.
There's nothing missing. How many expansions are there?
Well, that's what I'm talking about, the full experience. Once you get all the expansions, you have all the characters, you have all the stuff. And it also has the best expansion feature of any game ever made, and that is an airlock that you can throw people out of. I will airlock people I think are innocent just because I want to use the airlock. So if you ever play with me, just know someone's going out that airlock. But it's very sci-fi. It's our own hubris coming back to bite us, which is almost always a sci-fi concept. It is robots. It is hidden ideologies of what they want to do. You don't know they're a robot. There's betrayal. There's jumping to light speed. Anything you could think of in the sci-fi genre is in this game, and it's so well represented in the theme that there's just nothing that can touch it. It's a fun game. It's so evocative of the show. It's got everything going on with it. I don't think there's any game that's going to be able to top Battlestar Galactica for me, and if we're talking sci-fi, it's not even close.
Yeah, I object because I think maybe this was in our outer space video. maybe it was.
There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. But if you don't know how, it's a game where everybody has a role, and there's hidden roles that are Cylons So you pretend to be human to go along with everybody who's trying to reach Earth while keeping food, fuel, all the supplies you need up. And if the Cylons are able to sabotage the crew enough times, then the Cylons win. If humans make it to Earth, then they win, and the Cylons lose. So it's just a fun game of everybody's going and doing missions and checks, and if you fail too many of them, then humanity goes into decline. So really neat, fun mechanics to it. A lot of stuff going on, and you can feel the theme in every move you do.
I now own a copy of this, well, at least the base game, but I still haven't played it. I did have and play BSG Express, and I really liked some of the stuff that was going on there. I don't have that anymore. I sold it in a charity auction, but I have Dark Moon, which supports more players and is also fun. It loses something by not having the Battlestar Galactica IP on it, though. So, yeah.
And for those of you out there furiously trying to find one of these, you're not going to. It's been out of print for a long time, but it has been reprinted as Unfathomable, a Cthulhu game.
Yep. It's a direct port. So if you don't mind the lack of the theme, the entire game is there, every bit of it. So it's the game, you just don't get the fun space theme.
Yeah.
You get a Cthulhu one.
Exactly.
Yeah, and everybody loves
Some
Cthulhu.
of us like more.
I'm going to buy the rights to it just so that nobody can make more Cthulhu games. That's my goal.
Nice. And then buy all the rights to zombies and pirates. And,
Well, those are going to happen regardless. But
and farming.
The problem is Cthulhu is now public domain. So if we could just get that locked back up.
All right. Well, my next game is not agriculture or Cthulhu or any of those things. It is a science fiction game. Maybe you'll object because it happens mostly on a planet. But this is about, what is the backstory here? You are all colonists on a colony ship, but we're different factions. And you all started squabbling and backstabbing each other, and somebody actually sabotaged the ship and managed to get it to crash on the planet. So now there are life pods on the planet and pieces of the ship, tech pieces that you want to recover to put on your orbital dock. And you
literally just described the plot to Trigun, by the way, accidentally.
I don't know that, but yeah, it's funny because you're trying to recover these life pods, but only the ones for your faction. You don't care about the other people. Anyway, the game is Cryo from Luke Laurie. And you get, there's an underground cavern, and that is the only place that these life pods can survive once the sun sets. When the sun sets on the surface of the planet, everything is just gonna, freeze or whatever. So you've got these drones, and you've got to get these tech and to upgrade your orbital platform, but ultimately you're trying to recover these life pods and stick them underground into these caverns. And so there's like area control going on. There's sabotaging of each other. It's worker placement. So there's blocking of the positions. It's got that cool mechanism that we've seen in other Luke Laurie games, that when you recall your workers, when you spend a turn recalling your workers, you get some benefit from doing that. In this case, you dock them at your orbital platform, which you can have upgraded during the game. It's got multi-use cards. So every card is like 4 different things. Like, I think you can discard it for a resource. You can play it as a tech upgrade. You can use it as a ship, or you can keep it as a mission to score extra points at the end of the game, like a conditional points. So it's got so many neat things going on. And it is just, like I said, it's dripping with science fiction with that whole backstory I talked about, even though you can just play it mechanically as an engine building worker placement game if you want to. But, some of the cutthroat nature, like why is there the whole area control in these caverns, and why would I sabotage these life pods or the others, is, all part of the sci-fi backstory. So anyway, I've really liked the Luke Laurie games I've been playing lately. So I got this game just, I was like, oh, science fiction and Luke Laurie. All right, let's see what that is, and I got a copy, and I was pleasantly surprised, like, this is better than I thought it would be. And I was hoping it was going to be good. So yeah, it's really solid as a science fiction game, and then just really solid as a game, period. So anyway, Cryo.
You said you were talking about rescuing life pods on a planet, and I thought you were about to say Planet Unknown, and I was going to give you 2 red cards.
Yeah.
Me too. Actually, I was like, are you doing Planet Unknown? You can't do
Planet Unknown would go in the planet category.
That's why you were going to get disqualified.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it's not science fiction. Like you knew something I don't know.
No, I was going to get disqualified twice.
All right, cool. So, Erock, are you the only person left who hasn't given us the second choice?
There can be only one. Yes.
Nah.
Oh, Highlander's choice.
Yes.
The Toyota Highlander.
So the really hard part about this list for me was deciding which of these games was my favorite, and I don't think I did. So I think you could sub in this
disqualified
game for the first. Thank you. This game for the first one I said, and back and forth, just depending on the day. My second game is a choice about a futuristic calamity that's going to destroy the Earth, and what you can do is you can go back in time to you can kind of get. You can ask your future selves to send you things, to help you construct things, to help you get your civilization ready for the impending calamity that's going to happen. And that game is Anachrony. I really, really like Anachrony. There is I have talked about this a few times in the past. I don't remember why. I think maybe it was like A games or something we were doing, but
it starts with an A.
Right? But I really like this game. I basically summed up the whole theme of the game is there's a comet that's going to come down and blow everything up. And basically there's 4 factions on the planet. And each faction is trying to show that they have the best plan for the future, basically. And, victory points. And whoever has the most victory points at the end of the game has shown that they have the best vision for the future, and that's where all the people are going to go and seal themselves in once the big comet hits and blows up the planet. Well, I guess it doesn't blow up the planet because you're kind of going in a bunker for the whole thing or whatever. But anyhow, that is Anachrony. I really like it. It is basically a worker placement game, really. You go and get things. You use those things to build things. That's really the whole game. It just throws a whole lot of science fiction at you. Like the planet's already in bad shape. So in order to go to the main board to do worker placement actions, you have to wear a mech suit. So every round before you actually start doing actions, you have to decide how many mech suits am I going to power up, which means how many people am I going to send to the main board? And this is important because after your first, I think, basic 3 of them, then you have to start paying for them. And if I pay for 5 and I only sent 4, I screwed up because the resources that I need to do that, I very much could have used to do something else. So this whole game is a whole lot of, it's kind of cool to me how it's all about time, really. Like, even like when you have to plan out your whole turn. So like, it's all about time as far as that goes. Like I need to know what I'm doing on my turn so I can plan my mechs, but every bit of it goes into that because I also have the ability to ask my future self for supplies to help this turn. But again, I have to know what I'm doing this turn. Then I can say, all right, I need this and I need this and I need this so I can build this building to go ahead and do this. I can't just willy-nilly ask myself for stuff from the future and then not use it efficiently because I have to go back and pay it back later. Technically, you don't have to, but that causes the aforementioned anachronies. And you need to do that or you will be penalized. So as long as you stay on top of this, kind of like a tight wire act almost. But as long as you can stay on top of this, I feel like the game really does accelerate for you. As long as you know what you need, get it, and pay it back later. I've seen the game played without any of the time travel, and I've seen it played poorly with time travel. But, all over the place. It's a really, really cool game. I enjoy the mechanisms a lot. I really enjoy the pre-planning almost. And again, it's not pre-planning per se because you can have the greatest plan in the world and then babe goes in that spot you needed anyway. So there's a whole lot of dancing on your feet and shuffling around and trying to figure things out because the board's always changing. There's only so much resources. There's only so many places you can go to build buildings. And if people get there before you, you got to change everything up, which is, again, one of the reasons why you kind of want to ask yourself for supplies from the future. So instead of spending 2 turns going and get the stuff I need to build the building, I can just get it from myself in the future. And now I can just go build the building with my first turn. So there's a whole lot of this like mind warping back and forth. At the end of the day, the critics will just say it's a loan. You're taking out a loan, and in the future you have to pay your loan back. And that's fine. But I just feel like
those critics would be correct.
I feel like it really works well with the theme because one of the buildings that you build is basically a time machine. So it's the thing that lets you go back and then pay yourself back and things like that. So I think it works really well with the theme. It's dripping sci-fi, and it is one of my favorite sci-fi games. Beyond the Sun, Anachrony, Beyond the Sun, Anachrony, toss up. You pick.
Yeah, I mean it totally fits the theme. No objection there. But Teriffic Pace, you cut me to the core. You both listed games that I really don't like. I mentioned that I don't like Dinosaur Island for a specific game design decision, and I feel the same way about Anachrony. There's a specific game design decision, and I don't like the game because of that. So, boy, science fiction, which I love, would be such a painful list for me.
You said the game is all about time, and it's true because it takes 5 hours to play it as well.
Indeed,
it's one of and that's not bad. It's a very crunchy game. It's a game I describe these kind of games as you will earn every single point you get. There's nothing free. You've got to work for all of it. So if you like that thinky, I need to know what I'm doing. I need to know what I need. I need to have a contingency plan. If you like those kind of games, this is the game for you. It's in that space perfectly. And the theme does fit. It absolutely does feel like you're in a post-apocalyptic world. You're waiting for the stuff to go down, and you got to do what you can to get ready for all of it to happen. So I agree 100% that it deserves being on the list.
Cool. All right. There you go. There's 8 from us. But again, the people have a voice. The people have spoken. The people have picked 2 wildly different games. Well, at least in game length anyway. And so, you know what? I'll pass it over to John to talk about the one that ended up the top on our poll. I don't think anybody could argue that this isn't a very front and center science fiction game because it is very aliens themed without the aliens IP anyway, and that is Nemesis.
Yes. So it used to be an IP game. You knew it was going to be terrible. You're like, that's IP. They just like put this out on the shelf to try to make some money. Recently, in the last few years, we've gotten some amazing IP games, and Nemesis is not the Aliens IP in name only. If Ridley Scott walked past the table, he'd be like, get my lawyer on the phone. This game is 100% aliens in a box, and it's amazing. The miniatures, they look like really cool aliens. The theme of it, you're on a ship, you're trying to sneak from room to room and not draw the attention of the aliens so that you can get all the conditions met that you need on your personal objectives, which are hidden from everybody else, so that you can survive and win the game. There are escape pods that if you think things are going south and it's not going to happen, you can sneak in there, get into an escape pod, launch off, and be like, your guys are on your own. I'm getting out of here. There's times and stuff that causes extra escape pods to be open. Otherwise, they're locked. There's every corner of this game. You really feel like you're sneaking around for your life. You really feel like any door you open could be full of aliens. The people you're on the ship with, you don't know what their true motivations is. You don't know if you can trust them. You always have one eye on the aliens, one eye on the humans, and in the back of your mind, you're thinking, when do I need to get out of here? It is such a fun, thematic, tightly paced game that you cannot play this and come out of it thinking anything other than that was just a really cool game. Even if you don't like the mechanics, the theme's there. If you don't love the theme, the mechanics are really cool. So it's just, I can see why that was top of the people's choice, because it has all of those things just completely to the top of the list of everything you'd want in a sci-fi game. And it really feels like you're playing through the movie Aliens.
I agree. This is one of the most thematic games I've ever played. I'm surprised it made it to the top of the list just because it's so big and so expensive. Like, I'm surprised that many of our people have actually played it because it is so big. It's like, carrying around a toolbox kind of like big. It's big, man. It's big. It's expensive. I'm impressed that you guys have played all that. Good for y'all, because it is a really good game. Very thematic.
It's one of those Kickstarter bloats. It's got 7 different boxes and add-ons and all this different stuff you can do. But it's another one of those like Thunder Road where you have all that Kickstarter stuff, but you don't need it because the base game has a compelling enough game that you can play it with just retail copy, just base, and you're still happy with it. So it definitely falls into that category as well. It's nice to have the extra stuff. It's really cool. But if you don't have the shelf space or you don't want to drop that kind of money, the base game alone is enough to be happy with.
Gosh, I recently saw a relatively inexpensive used version of this game, and I almost got it, right? I just don't know.
It's hard to get to the table.
It. But getting it to the table and storing it. But man, Aliens is my favorite horror movie of all time, right? Mm-hmm. So I really think I would enjoy that IP. There were some really bad, like when I was a kid, Aliens roll and move games.
I believe it.
There were some of those, IP profiteering things you were talking about, right? So,
and I'll tell you what, people out there, do not misunderstand us. There have been some really good IP games that have come out. They're still making terrible IP games. So don't think just because it's got some movie or some character on it, it's going to be a good game. It's very rare out of all of them. We just happen to have some really good ones lately. I agree. The past 4 or 5 years, they've knocked some of them out of the park, and it's not something you would have ever expected before. I'm just saying beware, because they're not all great games that have an IP on them.
We should do that. Top 10 IP-based games, because I think there's enough now that you could make the case. I mean, there's even... I don't watch Sons of Anarchy, but I own a Sons of Anarchy board game because the game itself is just really fun and neat and is worth owning, even if you're not a fan of Sons of Anarchy. So don't just, like you said, don't just jump in and go IP good or IP bad. Research it, because there are enough out there that it's worth considering now.
Hey, at the Dice TowerCon virtual flea market, some sucker sold me a copy of Jaws for $6. And I haven't showed my kids that movie. They're a little young for that yet, but they love the game.
Awesome. Let them read the book.
That's cool. It's a solid game.
Yeah, it is.
It's a fun game. Yeah.
All right. Well, so I mentioned that, the other,
but not science fiction.
It's not sci-fi. That's true.
What if the shark had a laser beam on his head?
If the shark had a laser beam
and a hover tank.
Well, I was trying to think about Jaws 2 and 3. Jaws 2 and 3.
Those might be
those go off the rails a
little
bit.
Go off the rails.
Jaws 4 is definitely sci-fi because I've never seen it, so I just assume.
The Jawsening. All right. So, I mentioned that the second choice, Nemesis, was, easy number one pick. There were some others jockeying for second place in there in the people's poll. And really, it was, again, one of our channel members, look for the join button down below, who pushed this one up just enough to get it into second place to make it the second pick for the people's choice. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about King of Tokyo. So King of Tokyo is a kaiju game. Giant battling Japanese monsters, which have some tenuous explanation in science in where they came from.
Radiation.
Which makes it science fiction. That's what makes it science fiction and not fantasy, right? But this is just a beat 'em up game, right? So there are actually a lot of cards in the game. So in the game, you're rolling dice, and it's Yahtzee style. You can re-roll a couple of times. And then you're stuck with what you have. And those dice can damage your opponents. If you get claws, you can get points if you roll certain sets of numbers. And then there's also, if you have the new Dark Edition of King of Tokyo, you can go up the Wickedness track, which gives you some powers. But that Wickedness track, and also the lightning bolts that you can roll that give you energy and allow you to buy these cards, that's where there's some more thematic, particularly sci-fi elements in there, like It Lives or cloning or whatever, right? All of those cards have a very strong science fiction feel to them. And they're all about, getting more points or collecting more of these resources or beating up your opponents or healing yourself or something like that. But essentially, depending on the player count, 1 or 2 people are in Tokyo, and they're getting beat up by everybody who's outside of Tokyo. And the people outside of Tokyo want to get into Tokyo because that's one of the ways you score a bunch of points, by being in Tokyo. And there's 2 ways to win this game. You can either be the first who gets to 20 points, or you could just beat everybody else into submission because this game does have player elimination. If you get knocked out from your health, you are out of the game. And so eventually, King of the Mountain, one person left standing, and you win the game. And it is just it's just a fun dice chucker, which
Didn't your kids knock you out in one turn the last time you played? Can you confirm or deny that?
I basically knocked myself out, but I did some card where like if you end your turn with a couple of ones, you lose or something, and then I did that. Like what was I don't know. I gambled rolling a die. I was like, well, I'll re-roll this one last die to try to get this thing I need. There's only a 1 in 6 chance I'll knock myself out. Yeah, well, that happened. But you know what? My kids loved it. Thought it was hilarious. Yeah. There's also a power up expansion. Which gives you evolution cards, which again, because all the monsters are the same if you play just the regular game. But if you have these evolution cards, now the monsters are slightly different. You could get into play these different evolution cards.
Steve, I want to give you credit because you make that game sound awesome. And it is not. Okay.
So I will say that the power up expansion, and there's a couple of things you can do that does make it a better game. It's one of the rare cases where you hear me say you kind of need the expansions for this one. Once you get them, though, it becomes more of a game. But I agree. I
disagree. I think the game is fun even without the power up cards.
No, see, you made it sound fun. You made it sound like this monsters fighting monsters. Yeah, that sounds great. I would love that game, but that is not this game. This game is everybody turtles and tries to get points. That's
your group. So you shouldn't play this game with your group. Your group is the thinky, let me strategize. What am I going to do on my turn? I need to roll this much energy to get that card. So on this, I could do that. And that's not this game. This game is just roll some damn dice and knock each other. It's like Thunder Road.
That's the game I wanted to play.
Thunder Road like
nobody wants to play that game. Everybody wants to turtle up and get points and energy. And I'm like,
you are playing
in your group.
You are playing with the wrong group. If you play Thunder Road with that group, they're probably going to try to win the race. What? Come on,
everybody's neck and neck on the third.
I won the race. Thank you very much.
But yeah, I mean, it really is. It is just the dynamic. I know the group you were talking about. I mean, conceptually, I know groups like that, and you just don't play these kind of games with those people. You got to play it with my kids or some people who feel like winning on points is a hollow victory.
Well, there's alcohol
the real
involved.
way to play is King of the Mountain, right?
Well, cool. I'll invite your kids over. So
yeah, sure. Hey, anytime you want to babysit my kids, go right ahead, man.
I'll happily play with you guys, but just so you know, I'm gonna turtle and just buy cards the whole time because cards are the funnest part of that game.
Thank you.
Being able to do different things.
Well, but the cards, they let you smack people or they let you heal yourself, even though you're in Tokyo, which is normally a no-no, right? Like the cards do all kinds of combat-related things too, right? So
yeah, sometimes, but there's other cards in there.
What's your favorite monster to play?
I feel like there's like a pink and purple one with hearts on it, and that's the one that I always picked.
Pink and purple with hearts? I was going to say Mecha Godzilla thing, but I don't remember the hearts on that.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, it's funny. I have the Dark Edition, and they do have some promo characters for the Dark Edition, but I haven't gotten any of them because I can't, unless I ditch the insert, I can't fit anywhere in the box.
Yeah.
They
needed King of Tokyo big box.
They have one, but I have the Dracus promo from the Name of the Wind, that monster, right? That's a promo. I have the Dice Towers Iron Rook promo, and I think those are the only promos I have. And then I have all the just base Dark Edition monsters. They made a King of New York, by the way, which is a more gamer version of King of Tokyo, which is one of these days.
Boring.
I'm going to do a video on people who made games where they made a more gamer version, which was a mistake. There's a lot of games where they just take some game that's fun and then they're like, well, I need to reduce the randomness or something. And like, what? Just play a different game. There's thousands. Why are you trying to mess this? Randomness is what makes this game fun. Let me take that out.
In theory. It's what makes this game fun in theory.
That's what has me concerned about the new Chinatown, because it's like more family friendly and faster. And it's like, I don't want that in Chinatown.
Oh, and more interaction.
They're making
more interaction.
Making a new Chinatown?
Yeah, it's
they're retheming it.
Park or something. Mm-hmm. So it's got I suspect the theme is why they are re-releasing.
Oh, that makes sense.
Because there was some anyway, Chinatown, right?
Right.
Anyway, but they said that they're going to change it. They're going to tweak some things. I'm like, that's interesting. But they're like, it was like a lot more interaction. I'm like, the entire game.
How can there be more?
Nothing.
Yeah.
The whole game is trading amongst each other.
If you can't reach a
has me
trade,
worried.
you have to tie your hands together and have a knife fight. It's more interaction.
Well,
Winner
also,
gets all the tiles.
remember, John, we played this game one time, and there was another player in the game, and I was trying to trade him for something.
Yep.
He had something I wanted. I had something that would benefit him. I was trying to make a deal, and he's like, "Yeah, you know what? I'll just wait till next round." And I was like, "Okay,
I
this
don't want it next
I know you've played trading games before, but let me be clear. There's going to be a payout at the end of this year, so it's going to be worth less to me next round, not more. It's not going to get more valuable. Like, are you sure you know how this game works?" So yeah, anyway, but
Interesting.
it is an interesting own sort of animal in that. In fact, I'm not sure I know of another game that quite works like that, where it behooves you to make the deal now rather than wait.
Yeah.
I haven't played it, but
Chinatown.
maybe Sidereal Confluence.
That game's a
think
mess.
so. I don't know. We played Empires, was it, John? Which
Yeah.
is like a streamlined maybe
Yeah.
version of that, but wasn't very good.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, that's the problem with, like you said, streamlining these games takes away the point of the game. And it's like, yeah, you gamified it, but it lost what it was about.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, there you go. Anybody want to give an honorable mention or shout out? I mean, I gave out several when I was saying these got disqualified.
I instantly disqualified it because I figured it would get disqualified. Starfarers of Catan. It's more of a space game, but it's such a neat evolution of Catan.
I would have allowed that. I think that
Tiffany would have slapped me. Shoot.
I'm not slapping you guys. I'm only slapping Babe.
Okay. There was a few things that I'm like, because there's a bunch of planets and you're trying to colonize the planets and it's in space, so it was a little bit of I wasn't sure if it would fit. But as an honorable mention, Starfarers of Catan. If you haven't tried it, they re-released it a couple years ago, and it is a fantastic evolution on Catan. It plays similar to Catan, but it has a lot more going on with it. So if you've played a bunch of Catan and have not played this, I would definitely recommend giving it a try.
I have one as well. If you like very asymmetric 2-player card games, Android Netrunner. It's a very good game.
Very out of print.
Yeah, that's true. But I think there's another online version. I'm not saying
so. People have taken the game and ran with it, and they're creating online specific versions of this that you can print and play. So if you do like Netrunner, there has been a community that's sprung up since the company has stopped making it. So it's a very interesting side case. But if you do give it a try and you like it, there are outlets, even though it is out of print.
I don't have the links for you, but a little research will get you there. You can still get this game.
Mm-hmm. I haven't played that one, but I had Android Infiltration, which I think is set in the same universe.
Yeah, it's the same, like Larry Niven, or that's not the right Larry. Larry Niven, Ring World. I'm thinking of. Oh my goodness, who wrote Neuromancer?
Asimov?
William Gibson.
William Gibson.
William Gibson.
That's right.
There we got there. That's all that matters.
Old school sci-fi.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I don't have
and somehow we came back to sci-fi. Sorry, babe.
No, I was saying I don't have any honorable mentions because all of the things that I came up with and I said, "Oh, babe, is this sci-fi?" He said, "No, that's horror," or "No, that's fantasy," or "No." So I don't have any honorable mentions.
You can be sci-fi and horror like Aliens, right?
That's what I said. I said you can be both.
Yeah.
What's my honorable mention? What's it called?
It's called My Father's Work is the one.
Yep.
Yeah. What's wrong with that? Frankenstein is the quintessential original science fiction book.
An experiment's gone bad,
If you take a science fiction class, science fiction and literature class, it will start with Frankenstein.
That's a good point.
And yeah, so
I mean, if you can look at the philosophical aspect of what does it take to make something a person, that's sci-fi right there in itself. Like it's rooted heavily in that. So it's definitely got that horror gothic vibe to it, but it's sci-fi as well.
All right.
And if you want to follow up with more science fiction horror, just go look at the internet. It's the state of current affairs.
Yeah.
Internet, what's that?
Oh boy, the internet is its own horror show. All right, and on that note, I am Steven. That is Erock. That is John. That is Tiffany. We are Just Got Played, and we are gaming through themes. We are going to soon collect some of the most popular games from these lists and have our most thematic board game of all time live tournament. So look, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on that when that's coming. You can even, because it's going to be a live stream, you can even participate in the live stream and yell at us for making bad choices, as we sometimes do. Not me, but we collectively, not me individually.
Mostly you.
Mostly me.
Then we're going to take all those games and tape them on a piece of paper to turtles' backs, and then we're going to race the turtles. It really gets kind of weird toward the end, but
it's turtles all the way down, man.
It's turtles. It's just like Stephen King's world. It's just everything's on the back of a turtle.
All right, but if you want to keep up with us, hit that subscribe button or look in the description below. We've got our Discord channel where we're always talking about what we're doing in there, asking people questions, opinions, got people's choice polls going on, and just any board game stuff you want to talk about, come in there and talk to us. But until next time, thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Bye. Have a nice time.